One grace and peace to you. I'm Paul Dezay here at Sandy Hook United Methodist Church for our end of the week video where I run through the intersections that we've been studying and also give you a preview for Sunday's service and sermon. Hope you're all doing well out there on this rainy day today. I think rain over the next few days today. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump in to the intersections. We're in the season of Advent, which is the season of preparation before Christmas, before the birth of Christ. It's actually a reflection backwards upon the birth stories and the narratives that took place prior to the birth of Jesus to help us to be hopeful for the second coming, to be prepared for the second coming of Christ. So it's a season of waiting, anticipation, expectation, apprehension. It's a season full of various emotions, but ultimately everything is about creating in us an anticipation for what is looming before us, the birth of Christ, the second coming of Christ. Anyway, the passages for this week are up on the screen there. In the upper left-hand corner was Monday's passage. It is the visitation, Luke chapter 1, verses 39 to 45. It's when Mary goes to visit Elizabeth. Mary is an unwed teenager. She's poor. And then there's so much going on in her story of what that would have looked like within that society, being somewhat of an outcast, definitely being an outcast, her and Joseph. And then visiting Elizabeth, who is past age for childbearing, and Zechariah is a priest. They're part of the priestly clan. They're good people. They meet in the hill country. And I would imagine, as I take a look at the story, that you have two people who are different, but they share something in common, and that is this being a part of these birth stories of God doing this new thing, this fulfillment of a past thing. And so they find community in their shared experience. And I think that's a great reminder to us that we need one another. We all go through different things in life, but there are people who share in that those experiences with us. And so this story is a story of connection. It's a story of community. There's blessing and wonder, and there's a kick in this story. So I find it's a good story. Let's jump over to Tuesday's passage, Hebrews chapter 10, 5 to 10. There was a season there for a while where we were in Hebrews every week. And it's been a while, but the story of Hebrews is about Jesus fulfilling the old covenant. And when you take a look at this passage, there's very much talk of the sacrificial system and how Jesus came into the world to do the will of God, to be obedient to God. Psalm 40 verses 6 to 8 are quoted in here, and the writer of Hebrews puts it on the lips of Jesus. Jesus fulfills the old covenant. There is this obedience that was physical or required of his body. It wasn't just a spiritual obedience where he said yes. It was a physical obedience that required a sacrifice. This one sacrifice fulfilled all the sacrifices. And so Jesus came to do the will of God. So what a great passage that is. And what a great truth that is. And then Wednesday's passage, Micah chapter 5, verses 2 to 5a, Old Testament passage. Micah, which is my youngest child, his name means in Hebrew, who is like Yahweh. And I did not know that. So that was a rewarding piece of knowledge that I discovered this week. The book of Micah is a lot of doom and then some hope. And then in this passage today, we get some of the hope. The Israelite people have been judged by God, and they've been conquered by Assyria. And so here we have in this passage an insignificant Bethlehem, insignificant, that God comes to fulfill from the ancient times. There's a family tree here. There's a story that is taking place. There is return from exile. Verse 3, it talks about return. Verse 4 talks about strength and majesty. And then the passage ends with peace. and this coming Sunday is for Sandy Hook, it is the theme of peace, which would be the Hebrew word shalom, which means the way things ought to be. Um, and that's part of God's character. God is peace. God is shalom, and he works to repair shalom and is doing something significant in this insignificant city called Bethlehem, the home of David. And God is going to bring about salvation. And then Thursday's passage, Luke 1, 46b to 55. Typically we're in the Psalms, but during this season, Advent season, typically we kind of veer to different songs that, and especially we're in the season in Luke here, the year of Luke, year C. So we have Mary's song, the Magnificat, which is from the Latin word where we have magnifies. So this song isn't about Mary. This song is about the power of God. It talks about a savior, not to whisk people away to heaven, but a savior who's coming to bring liberation for those people who are experiencing earthly persecution and oppression. There is talk of lowliness, which in Hebrew, in Greek, the word also means humiliation. It talks about being a servant, which also means slave. And this story is anchored in the story of Israel, just like Wednesday's passage, where this passage talks about generations. There's a role reversal. The powerful and the proud are brought low, and the low and the hungry are lifted up. There is justice, and there's a promise fulfillment that is at the heart of this particular passage. All right, so what are the intersections for this week? What did you discover as you did your study? I came up with a few. That last phrase that I said when I was talking about Mary's song, promises fulfilled, I believe that's at the heart of these passages. When you take a look at Micah and Luke, there's a coming fulfillment. In Hebrews, it is speaking that Jesus did fulfill. So in both sections, there is this either coming fulfillment or reached fulfillment. There is in these passages an element of people who are low are shown grace and favor. We see that in Mary's story, encountering Elizabeth and being referred to as blessed. Who am I to be a part of this? Who am I to witness this? And then in Mary's song, we see that grace and favor. But we also see it in the insignificance of Bethlehem. And so there's that idea of grace and favor. And then which leads me to, I wrote down insignificance. People who feel that they're insignificant actually have a very significant part to play. And then finally, obedience, which Jesus came to do the will of God, to be obedient to that. And Mary said yes. Her obedience is now part of this story. And so that invitation, Elizabeth said yes, and she was invited to be part of the story. And so that invitation to us is there today. We're invited to say yes, to be part of the story of God, to be obedient, to walk in the footsteps of Jesus and Mary and Elizabeth, John the Baptist, and all the characters within these Advent stories and Christmas stories. Preview for Sunday. So we're going to be focusing on Mary's song, which was Thursday's passage. I really want to talk about how her song is a song of peace. And again, that word peace in Hebrew is shalom, and that's such an important word. Peace seems an absence of conflict. We typically define it that way, but shalom is so much bigger of a word. And that is woven into this. Mary's song is a celebration that God is repairing shalom. God is restoring the things that are broken. We all come to this Advent season with a lot of brokenness, and a lot of disappointment, and a lot of frustration. And we have the opportunity to celebrate that God is showing us grace and favor to come and be the repairer of the brokenness. And so we're going to talk about that. And I think that's something that we all need to hear. It's good news. Jesus is coming. And that phrase, Jesus is coming, means quite a bit during this time of year. And so let's celebrate together. So that's this coming Sunday's preview. We'll also be taking communion, third Sunday of every month. And what intersections did you find this week? If you would share those with me, I appreciate your willingness to be part of this conversation during this Advent season. That's all I got. Stay dry out there. Grace and peace, everybody.